Welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Sermon. I'm Mat Hotho, the Director of Production and Online Engagement.
And I'm Magrey deVega, the Senior Pastor.
So Magrey just finished preaching the final sermon in our series, The Good, the Bad, and the Healthy, all about emotions, and it was the emotion of nostalgia.
Yeah.
It's really got me thinking.
Well, before we roll into that, this is our first Beyond the Sermon in the newly revamped studio.
Yeah.
And I just got to say, I miss the old studio. There's so many good things about that old studio. Those were the days.
Those were the days.
Man, just like literally days ago.
Yeah.
Those just make me feel nostalgic for the old studio.
There you go.
Actually, I love this new studio.
Yeah. The old studio had its things. It was a great starting point, which, I mean, that is one thing that's helpful about nostalgia. It helps you see markers along the way.
That's
growth
true.
And that kind of thing.
That's true.
But let's talk about your message. So it was nostalgia is a character out of Inside Out 2.
Right.
I still have yet to see that movie.
Right.
So how does nostalgia show up in the movie?
Very briefly. It's only the 10th character of the 27 that the psychologist originally had envisioned to be part of Riley's brain. We still haven't seen all 27 characters, but she makes a very brief appearance as the 10th character. She literally comes out to the surprise of the other emotions, and it's anxiety who stuffs her back into the storage room to say, we're not ready for you yet. So her brief few seconds in the film are an interplay between anxiety and nostalgia, which is a very fascinating way to think about how your emotions interplay with each other. Your anxiety, which is so fixated on the present, and then nostalgia, which tries to draw you back into the past. And I think that happens psychologically for all of us.
Yeah, right. Because anxiety is that moment when you forget to be rooted in what's happening right now.
It's a good way to say it.
And you start either ruminating on things that could happen in the future,
right,
or feeling regrets or shame about things that have happened in the past.
That's right. And in the text for today, we see that interplay within scriptures between what I identified as the two main command words all throughout the scriptures, which is remember, which is nostalgia, and listen, which is to focus on the present.
Yeah.
So listen and remember. And I knowing your knowledge of the Hebrew scriptures, those are probably very important words.
Yeah, they are. I mean, it's interesting when you think about both those words because they're words that are not confined just to God's actions or the people's actions.
Right.
Both the divine and the people of God are able to participate in both of those acts of remembering and listening. Now, I can't take credit for this. I kind of cribbed off of a video, but I did not realize that there's actually not a Hebrew word for obey.
Really?
Yeah, the word listen is used for obey.
Oh, that makes sense, yeah.
And I've always, if you listen to my sermon, no pun intended, like 8 weeks ago when I wrapped up the series on reading the Bible, I talked about how one of the things that makes the Bible really tough is it was originally an oral tradition. So much of what you get in the Bible is oral. Hence, listen.
Right.
And remember.
Right.
Because when you're dealing with things that you can't readily go back to in terms of, you have a written text of it, you have to listen really deeply and you have to remember really well, right? So you get things in the Bible like in the 10 Commandments of remember the Sabbath and keep it holy.
Yeah.
It doesn't just say do the Sabbath.
Right.
Remember it.
Right.
Yeah.
That connection between listening and remembrance is integral to Benedictine spirituality. So the rule of St. Benedict, which helped govern the 5th century Christians all the way throughout today, begins with the word listen. It is the first word of this beautiful, majestic rule of St. Benedict because it's the very same thing you're mentioning. In order for us to be obedient, we have to listen. Listening and obedience are completely intertwined. And I love the reminder that remembering and listening is not just a human quality, it's also a divine attribution, and it should dictate the relationship between us and God, that even God has the capacity to remember. Even God has the capacity to listen, which means that even God has the capacity to be nostalgic, which is the way
really
for us to live into that image of God. The past is worth remembering. But as I said in the sermon, we have to remember the whole of our past, not just the rose-colored glasses of the nostalgia character, but the whole of it, including the pain and the hardship.
Yeah. So if I could get you to share, what's something that you're nostalgic about that you maybe before you were a bit more self-examined, you would go back to that time.
Sure.
Oh, I wish I could go back to this.
Yeah.
And then as you've thought about it more, you're like, well, that wasn't always the best time.
So I'll give you a real specific example because I think about this often just in terms of my weekly rhythms. When I was in seminary, so that would have put me in my mid-20s, I loved getting together twice a week with fellow seminary friends for basketball. So Tuesday and Thursdays from noon till about 2, we got together in a local rec center and we just played basketball. And it was life-giving and fun, and it was free of all of the stresses of seminary and all of those things. And that was back in the day that I could play basketball twice a week. And I miss those days. I mean, I can say I miss the camaraderie, the friendship, the physical activity, the competition, and just playing basketball. What's interesting is there are parts of seminary that I don't miss at all, which is the deconstruction phase of my faith. When I went through some really deep existential faith decisional moments that were really hard to go through, as well as adult life stage developmental stuff. It was the first time that I'd lived not just away from home, but away from the state. And so I had to go through a lot of really significant transitional moments of making my own decisions and trying to figure out my career. And it was really hard for me. And so seminary was really tough in that way. This is all to say, when it comes to nostalgia, you take the even with the odd. And as much as we want to only think about the good old days with rose-colored glasses, there is something both therapeutic, life-giving, and beneficial from also thinking about the hard stuff. One, because it reminds you of how far you've come, but also it reminds you that your moments of growth happen during the toughest times. And that's a reminder that if you're going through a tough time now, years from now, you will look back at this really hard time with that same sense of nostalgia, that look how much you're growing right now.
And you know, we were, before we started recording, we watched the trailer of Inside Out 2, where we see that little bit with nostalgia. Nostalgia goes, oh, if only we could go back 30 seconds 30 seconds ago or something like that. Yeah. I think nostalgia, we think about it on these broader timelines of 7, 10, 20 years in the past. Right. I remember in seminary, though, I used to tell myself, okay, I've got a paper due on May 8th and I'm freaked out about it. May 12th is going to come.
Right.
And that would be what I would just repeat in my head, right? Like May 12th has got to get here eventually.
Yeah.
Right. What I mean by that is at some point on May 12th, you can look back and go, oh, I did it. I survived it. Right. And sometimes nostalgia can be that thing that we can go back to just rather quickly, even if we have anxiety about making things like phone calls. Or meeting with family members that we're estranged with. Sometimes nostalgia can give us the ability to just go, I survived that. It is May 12th and I am still here.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Exactly right. Yeah. There's a conversation I have with myself often when I'm feeling the pressure of multiple deadlines converging at once. And I tell myself, I'll find a way. I always have. What's interesting about that is last week, I was with my daughters in Chicago, celebrating lots of wonderful things. And my younger daughter, Maddie, who is in her first year teaching, is feeling the crush of lots of deadlines. And she said to me the same thing. She said, I've got all these things happening all at once, but you know what? I'll find a way. I always have.
Do you think did you ever say that?
No,
around them?
Not to her. This is self-talk.
Okay. Because that's so interesting that your self-talk in some way was imbued in your daughter in such a way that she remembered and is just kind of living that as well. I mean, granted, that's kind of how generational trauma happens as well sometimes.
I was going to say, that's a scary compliment.
Right, it is.
Because when she learns the good stuff, she also learns the bad stuff from me. Yeah.
But, you know, I mean, and now we're kind of getting off the topic of nostalgia, but this is a good way to wrap the series in some ways, is that we do this work and we're in different life stages in some ways, but I'm getting to see the stuff I've passed down to my kids as they're becoming teenagers. Right. You're seeing as they're launching into adulthood.
That's right.
That we pass these things down to them, and we've noticed the things we've picked up from our parents.
Exactly.
And it's almost like, okay, we're just refining it.
Right.
By God's grace, hopefully, we are aware enough of our emotions, the good, the bad, and the healthy, that we're able to become the best versions of ourselves and pass that on to the people around us.
And I think at the end of the day, that's what this is all about. And I hope that these last 5 weeks, where we've just touched the surface on emotional health, will prompt you on your own journey. It's a lifelong journey. It's hard. It's ultimately worth it. And the benefits will outlast you, because whether you have children or not, the impact you make on others is contingent on you being your best and truest self.
That's right. So I think my encouragement to you as we wrap up this series would be to go back and watch the other sermons in this series if you missed any of them, and to go back and watch the Beyond the Sermons, especially the one from last week where we replayed the conversation that Erica Clark had with us at a workshop. It was an hour-long discussion about healthy emotions, how to regulate your emotions, tools to use to help you when you're feeling anxious, but also to help you when things are going great, to make markers for those moments in your life so that you can see that journey as you're nostalgically looking back on it. Anything you want to say as we wrap up the series?
I like the new studio.
There it is. There. I miss the old one. JK. I really like this studio. Hey, thanks so much for joining us, and we will see you next time